Friends, welcome to UPSC CSE. Let's crack it in English. So, briefly about me, I'm Siddhi Bangard, your friend, educator, and mentor. So, very good morning to everybody. I have 3 years of teaching experience. Did my undergraduation from the IT Mesra in Computer Sciences Engineering. Appeared for civil services, 4 mains in an interview, and then qualified my MBA exams and got my MBA and HR degree from XLRI Jamshedpur. With that, folks, let's begin today's class. So, briefly about Unacademy, we provide you with daily live classes, live tests and quizzes, and obviously a PDF note format. So, that means after each and every class, you get notes in the PDF format, which you can download from the website itself after the lecture. All our courses are structured around the prelims, mains, and the interview syllabus. So everything is covered by us, and your preparation can be completely aligned in line with the syllabus. We also provide you with unlimited access to each of our courses with just one subscription. So that means, for example, if you have to study GS and if you have to study optionals, you don't need to pay separate fees. If you have paid the fees for optionals, then you get access to all the GS courses and vice versa. That means by taking just one subscription under the UPSC CSE category, you get access to more than 200 courses that we are running on our platform, including the courses that have been completed. That means the recorded lectures, the courses that are running, that means the present lectures, and the upcoming lectures. All the top educators are already there on the platform, so you don't need to run around the country to be educated from the best in the industry. We provide you with all the courses under one head, as you can see here. And finally, our 1 year subscription cost is less than 40,000 if you use my code SBUS, because you get an instant 10% off on 44,000, which is very reasonable price. And we also have a no cost EMI available on our 6 month, 12 month, and 24 month subscription. So our 6 month subscription also costs you only rupees 36,000, and for our 2 year subscriptions, the price has come down to 58,000 or less than 29,000 per year. If you use my code SBUS, you get an instant 10% off. And obviously, there is no cost EMI available on our 6 month, 1 year, and 2 year subscriptions. The 2 year subscriptions are very helpful for UPSC 2021 students, because it will provide you access to not just the present courses which are here, but also to the 2021 courses. With that, let's proceed for today. So, India and its eastern neighbors. It's part 6. We'll have one more part 7, when we'll complete the India-Bangladesh series completely. Alright. So, today we'll be discussing India-Bangladesh relations part 1. And, sorry, in part 7, we will discuss India-Bangladesh relations part 2. So, today I'll be discussing the importance of Bangladesh for India. And then I'll be discussing Bangladesh's history. Now, why have I split it into two? It's because Bangladesh in itself is a huge country with a huge historical baggage. So, unless you understand the history of Bangladesh completely, we won't be able to understand why Bangladesh is behaving the way it is and what is its important significance to India. And of course, Bangladesh is very intricately linked to the history of India, because obviously, earlier, being a part of the Indian subcontinent, Bangladesh was actually a part of India. It was never a separate country. It only became a separate country in 1971. So our lecture will be divided into parts, like we'll have a brief overview about Bangladesh, and then we'll be discussing the history of Bangladesh in 3 phases, from 8th century to 18th century, then 18th century to 1971, when Bangladesh finally got independence, and then from 1971 to the present government. So that will be our agenda for today. And then in the upcoming session, we'll be discussing in the history of India-Bangladesh relations, which will cover the water treaties that we have with India-Bangladesh and how the relationships have panned out since 1971 till now. All right, and then we'll be discussing areas of cooperation and areas of dispute with Bangladesh. This is absolutely in line with what we have been doing with the rest of the countries. Though we should have discussed India and Pakistan a little bit earlier, but I wanted to complete India and Eastern neighbors first. So definitely, if we know more about Bangladesh part, so I won't be covering it in the India-Pakistan relations, which will be the next session after India-Bangladesh relations 2 completes. So with that, let's begin. About India, we already know. So what have we covered in our India's eastern neighbors? We've already covered Sri Lanka, we have covered Nepal, we have covered Myanmar, China, and Bhutan. So this is the last remaining country, but albeit the most important one, because as you can see, it's not China that we share our maximum boundary with. It is actually Bangladesh which touches the maximum boundary of India. And nonetheless, why? Because it was a part and parcel of India and went to Pakistan once the partition happened, and then became an independent country in 1971. So our Bangladeshi border is manned by Border Security Forces or BSF. It has a huge population. See, it has a population of 161 million for an area which is approximately 0.15 million square kilometers. Which makes Bangladesh one of the most populous and one of the most density, population density wise also countries. It's one of the most population dense countries in the world, because in a very small area a huge amount of population lives. So it's similar to what happens in India, and it's similar to what happens in West Bengal, which is one of our most population wise dense states in the India. And it has a huge GDP, though not compared, because almost 1000 times less than India's GDP, but comparable to all other our Eastern neighbors except for China. It has the highest GDP amongst all our other Eastern neighbors. It's doing quite well amongst all our Eastern neighbors, and it's a very friendly nation towards India. However, despite the high GDP, despite its production, despite its name in the international arena, the human development indices remain very poor, and we will see why. Because Bangladesh has had a very turmoil history even after independence, and that's why the history of Bangladesh becomes a very important subject when we are studying India Bangladesh relations. The legislature of Bangladesh is called Jatiya Sangsad, right? Okay, so let's begin. Bangladesh is here. As you can see, its only neighbor predominantly is India and Myanmar. So let's go here. I'm so sorry. I think I marked an incorrect place. I marked the northeastern parts. So there you go. This region is Bangladesh. All right. Though the boundary looks very small, but the curvatures are so many there. So if you actually know that if something is folded, the area actually increases. So there are too many folds in India-Bangladesh boundary, and hence it's a 4,000 kilometer long boundary. In fact, 4,100 kilometer long boundary that we share with Bangladesh. And definitely, Bangladesh is a country with the largest sea beach and largest mangrove forest, courtesy the Sundarbans. So not only do we have a land border with Bangladesh here, as you can see, we also have a maritime border with Bangladesh. Now let's come here. So this is Bangladesh here. As you can see, on three sides, Bangladesh is surrounded by India, all right, and it has a limited boundary with Myanmar. And additionally, on the south of Bangladesh lies the Bay of Bengal, definitely derives its name from the Bengal state which was there in India, in the Indian subcontinent. It is narrowly separated by Nepal and Bhutan by the Siliguri corridor, about which we studied in our previous lecture when I was talking about the Indo-Bhutan relationships under the Doklam crisis. Now let's come here. It's an enhanced version of how Bangladesh looks like. So let's see what are the states that surround Bangladesh. Geographically, Bangladesh is surrounded by West Bengal, all right, Jharkhand here, Sikkim, this area, Meghalaya, yes, Assam here, Tripura, yes, and Mizoram. So a lot of states actually surround Bangladesh, and definitely that actually makes Bangladesh all the more important to us, because it actually provides us with an easier access to our northeastern states. Just like when we talked about India-Myanmar relationships, about the Kaladan multimodal project to actually access Manipur from the Kaladan river in Myanmar. Here also we are trying to build railways and bus links directly passing through the Bangladesh to actually access Tripura, Nagaland, Manipur, and all the eastern northeastern states, because this corridor, there is only this is a very small corridor, and any blockages here can completely cut off the northeastern states. So by the design of geography, Bangladesh becomes extremely important to India. Now let's proceed, friends. So good morning everybody. I'm sorry Prakash, not Jharkhand. Okay, so let's come here. Bangladesh, as we know, It's one of the fastest growing economies. In fact, it was named as the next 11. So the person, Mr. O'Neill, who named BRICS economy or who coined the term BRICS, was also the one who put Bangladesh amongst the next 11 economies. All right. He also said that it's one of the most exciting places to be in the coming times. And Bangladesh at present, in fact, along with all the other Eastern economies, along with India, it's one of the fastest growing economies in the entire world. Though the GDP, as per the purchasing power parity or as per the nominal rates, remain far, far less. However, the rate of growth is extremely high. Its economic structure is similar to India. It's a market based mixed economy with three sectors, again, the agriculture, services, and manufacturing. And the percentages of how these sectors actually contribute to the economy are almost similar to India. For example, in Bangladesh, almost 14% people are engaged in agriculture. It's 14% people, sorry, 14% agriculture contributes 14% to the GDP of Bangladesh, and in India it's 18%. And in India the percentage is 18%. In Bangladesh, almost 54% people are engaged in the service sector. 54% GDP actually comes from the service sector. In India, it's approximately 51%. So the economic structure is more or less similar, though historically or politically the path has been extremely, extremely different. Bangladesh has suffered a lot of military coups and a lot of military rule and a lot of instability in polity, which has only come to stabilize post the 2000s, and we'll see how. Good morning, everybody. The major items of export from Bangladesh are textiles. Obviously, Bangladesh, since very ancient times, is known for its silk cloth, its cotton textiles, tea, jute, steel, cement. Steel, cement, and pharmaceuticals are recent additions that's post the liberalization of Bangladesh economy. Otherwise, Bangladesh has always been known for textiles, tea, and jute. In fact, tea is one of the oldest industries of Bangladesh. We already know about Darjeeling tea. So we have similar kind of climate which is shared by Bangladesh. Though you'll be surprised, actually, if you go to Shillong, if you go to Meghalaya, and if you actually go around, once you are in Shillong, in that cleanest village of Shillong, which is there, you actually have certain structures made up of bamboo where you can go and use your binoculars and just look past the Bangladesh India border, and you'll see that there's a huge difference in the way the geography actually panders out. So Shillong or Meghalaya is actually a plateau region, so it's a little bit higher. We have some hills there. The Garo Khasi Jayanti actually lines up Meghalaya. And once you look at with the binoculars, just in the distance of approximately 10 kilometers, you see the Bangladeshi plains. And it's a beautiful sight to behold because clouds are hanging everywhere, especially if you go during the monsoon season. And you can see water and water everywhere in Bangladesh. So that's a beautiful, beautiful sight if you watch it from the Shillong border. Politics. So actually, it has been a British colony as a part of India, definitely, because it recently got independence and then it went with Pakistan. So that's very, very obvious. The cultures actually got mixed because of changing rulers. So when I'll be talking about the history of Bangladesh today, we'll be talking about. So in the past, there were Hindu rulers that were ruling the Bangladesh area as we know today geographically, and then how the Muslim people came in or the Muslim rulers came in, and how this actually the culture got so much mixed that now West Bengal is predominantly Hindu and East Bengal or former East Bengal or Bangladesh is predominantly a Muslim area. So we'll see how that change actually came about and how that change actually finally went into becoming something as a Hindu versus Muslim dominions leading to partition. So we'll see that entire history panning out today. Definitely, it was carved out of East Pakistan with India's help in 1971 or 16th December 1971, which is also known as the Vijay Divas. It is considered to be one of the biggest victories of India when it comes to international wars or international diplomacy. Socially, it has been a part of the Indian subcontinent, so we have more in common with Bangladesh than we have with the US or any other Western world because the way of life has been extremely similar. As you can see, even in the economy or constitutionally, things have panned out similarly for Bangladesh. Islam and Hinduism, both religions are recognized there. Bangladesh, Islam is the state religion, yet Bangladesh calls itself a secular nation. So the secularism, how we understand in Bangladesh, is very different from the secularism that we understand in India or that we understand in the United States. It's the 8th most populous country in the world, and it shares a culture with India, both in terms of religion and regional similarities. Let's come to the geography part of it. So it's a part of Southeast Asia. Definitely it's a part of Indian subcontinent. So it's a part of Southeast Asia. The area is approximately 0.15 million square kilometers. Very, very small area. Surrounded by India and Myanmar. West Bengal, Sikkim, Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram found the boundary of Bangladesh with India. It has the longest beach and largest mangrove, and it has been a founder of international organizations called BIMSTEC and SARC. So SARC in 1985 and BIMSTEC in 1997. So Bangladesh has been a founding member of both these organizations. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're enjoying the session. All right. If there are any doubts, please let me know. Okay. Let's come to the importance of Bangladesh. So just like importance of Myanmar or importance of Nepal, importance of Bhutan specifically, Bangladesh is similarly important to our northeastern regions. The borders on all our eastern fronts, except for China, we have very, very porous borders, and insurgency is a major issue in those areas. So, by the very virtue of sharing the longest geographical border with India and also sharing the maritime boundary, Bangladesh becomes extremely important. Your neighbors are always important in your foreign policy. So, since it shares the borders with a lot of states in the east and northeastern India, definitely becomes very important for us to reach to northeast India. Also, its contribution, India's contribution in Bangladesh liberation is a cause of long-lasting friendship between Bangladesh and India. So it also acts as a buffer between India and China. It also acts as a, not by geography, but by the very design of the international relations. So having a friendlier ally in your neighborhood is always an advantage. As I've told, India-Bangladesh border is highly porous, and yes, it is poorly guarded and located along a remote, underdeveloped, insurgency-prone region. So it is true for most of our eastern borders. We are trying to develop a lot of security infrastructure there, yet it remains very poorly guarded. In fact, human trafficking, drug trafficking, insurgency activities are very common along these borders. So it is very important that the border nations are extremely friendly so that the armies can get together and actually fight insurgency in these areas. And in fact, Bangladesh has been very helpful in fighting the insurgency in Assam. Also, Bangladesh is very important. Friendly relations with Bangladesh is very important to control the huge deluge of migrants that keep coming from our eastern neighbors, be it from Myanmar or be it from Bangladesh itself. In fact, the recent citizenship amendment bill is a case in point where we're not recognizing Rohingyas, or the whole issue of debate was that we are excluding a religious minority from coming into India or giving it a citizenship. And obviously that entire issue flared up, especially in Assam, because they had just completed the national register in Assam and they had excluded them. So initially they had excluded all those people who had come after 1971 to Assam, the Bangladeshi immigrants, and now that date has been raised to 2014. So the major contention there was that as much as Hindus can get the other minorities can get citizenship of India, the Muslim minorities will not be able to do so. And the problem is that if we are running that national registry again, so a lot of people, a lot of Muslims who are already settled in India might be excluded from citizenship, which caused a huge furor in the parliament and across the national streets, and which is only subdued right now because of the lockdown that is going on. So let's see what happens on that front going further. And obviously, in 2018, when our Prime Minister visited Bangladesh, he actually declared, there was a very interesting observation that happened, about which I have already talked in my Look East India policy when I had explained the Look East, Act East, and the Neighborhood First policy, I think the third or the fourth lecture, that we are starting our Look East policy from Bangladesh. So, our Look East policy actually starts from Bangladesh and ends at the western shores of the US. So that is the current significance, current development in our Look East policy, and Bangladesh is extremely center to our Look East or Act East policy. In fact, you can say that Bangladesh is basically a center of both neighborhood first and Act East policy. And when it comes to Myanmar, Myanmar is a link between neighborhood and Act East policy. So both of these nations become extremely, extremely important going further. Now here is a map of Bangladesh, political map of Bangladesh. So as you can see, it has been distributed amongst a lot of divisions. Dhaka is the capital. However, the Chittagong port remains one of the biggest financial sectors till date. It was set up by the British when they finally, actually originally it was settled by the Portuguese who came in the 16th century, but they were thrown out by the British, and then the British made it a huge center of trade and commerce. So the Chittagong port is still the most important port that is there in Bangladesh, and right now Chinese are actually developing the Chittagong port further, so that's a cause of concern for us. In fact, you'll be surprised to know that the first railways that was set up by the British, all right, or the first railways in Asia actually was set up in Bangladesh in the Khulna division, all right, that was set between mainland India and Bangladesh here. And it's only a year later in 1862, the Japanese Asian Railway was set up. So Bangladesh is also the home to the earliest railway systems that we see in Asia. Now, if you look at this data, you will see a very interesting thing. So not only Bangladesh, so interestingly, if you look at it this way, the better words to put it, that most of the time what has happened as a result of wars is we have completely disrupted countries or completely eliminated them from the world map. India was very significant in actually birthing a new country or getting, altering the map in such a way that a new country is born. However, it still remains to see that Bangladesh is one of the few countries, all right, in fact, it's the first country in the world that was built along ethnic and language issues, right? Because of the ethnicity and the language issues. So here in East Bengal, they wanted to follow Bengali, and in Pakistan, it was Urdu was the major state language, so that created a rift. And definitely the ethnicity here, 98% people who are residing are Bengali Muslims. There it is predominantly Muslim, and they follow a different form of Muslim religion. So that caused a lot of rift between East Pakistan and West Pakistan, and led to the carving of Bangladesh from East Pakistan. So it is one of the few states around the world that is actually extremely homogeneous when it comes to ethnicity. As you can look at here, 98% of the people are Bengalis and only 2% are minorities. And in fact, 90% people actually follow Islam as their religion, and only 8% people follow Hinduism. So Hindus are kind of a persecuted minority here. Though when both Pakistan and Bangladesh were birthed, they decided to be secular and they decided to preserve the interest of minorities. But as we are seeing, which is what is happening currently, we actually don't see much of that happening. So India has maintained its end of bargain, but both these nations haven't done much when it comes to safeguarding their minorities. So let's go. Yes, Srihari, you're right. Chittagong Armory Raid. It's very, very famous. It's a part of our revolutionary history. All right. So let's go to Bangladesh's history. It's a very, very interesting read. You'll see how this entire region has transformed and how the governance actually changes the way the society behaves or the society actually comes about. So during the 8th century, it's actually considered to be a golden period in the history of this region. So we had the Pala Empire, the Chandra dynasty and the Sena dynasty. You must have heard about them when you were reading about the ancient India. So they were the last pre-Islamic Bengali middle kingdoms or Hindu kingdoms that existed in Bengal. So at that point of time, East Pakistan was predominantly Hindu. And I will also show you how the Pala Empire actually looked like. So if you see, the Pala Empire is here, or the Pala Empire is here. It was founded by Gopal. All right. It is also dubbed as the Golden Age of Bengal because the Pala Empire raised the standards of Bengal's culture and politics. You can actually find gold coins from this era. So, gold coins are a part of the numismatic study. So, coins actually tell us a lot about the prosperity of the region. So, if you're finding actually gold coins from an era, that indicates that that region or that dynasty was extremely rich when it came to trade and must have raised the structure or the stature of culture and politics during those times. The state must have been extremely prosperous to be able to coin gold coins. These kings actually followed Buddhist philosophy, Mahayana Buddhism, and they promoted classical Indian philosophy, literature, painting, and sculptural studies. In fact, it was during this period that Bengali language was formed in its entirety when the Palas were ruling the Bengali region. And it was also the time when epics and sagas such as Mangal Kavyas were written. So, Palas are actually also known for their elephant war cavalry and strong naval fleet. So, obviously, Bengal being at the shores of Bay of Bengal, you're actually supposed to have a very, very strong navy. In fact, the time when we ceased to have a strong navy was the time when we actually lost Bengal to the British. In fact, interestingly, you will be amazed to know that before Britain actually occupied Bengal, Bengal was a very, very huge center for shipbuilding, so much so that our technology was so advanced that our production in shipbuilding was a combined total of the entire world production in shipbuilding, and the ships that we made of flux hull, they were very, very advanced compared to the ships that were made by the British. So it's only after the industrial revolution that Bengal, because a similar kind of industrial revolution did not happen in Bengal, because obviously it went under the British occupation, we actually started lagging behind in shipbuilding. Otherwise, West Bengal, or sorry, the East Bengal or the entire Bengal was considered to be a big, big center of shipbuilding in the past. So let's come back here. So after these dynasties got over, Islam was introduced in the Pala Empire through trade. So as you can see here, during the Pala Empire, it was the Abbasid Caliphate in the Middle Eastern regions. So obviously trade was very, very huge here. That's why we can found gold coins in Pala Empire or from the times of Pala Empire. And these people actually, because the trade relations were very huge, so the Islamic people used to come to Pala, these people used to go back there. So there was a lot of cultural exchange, and hence Islam was actually introduced into the Pala Empire during this time. Now, but it was not completely introduced. However, with the conquest of Bakhtiyar Khalji or the Khalji dynasty coming into picture in the 13th century and the subsequent establishment of the Delhi Sultanate resulted into a full spread of Islam across the entire region. Shah Jalal is a very known famous philosopher and preacher of this area or the 14th century. He actually helped establishing and spreading the Islamic faith across this entire region. Now, in 16th century, the Bengal Suba was actually absorbed into the Mughal Empire. In fact, it was known as the crown jewel of the Mughal Empire because the Bengal Suba was also known as the paradise of the nation. It was the richest Suba. Suba is a political province in the Mughal Empire. It's a what do you say, it's an organizational structure in which you have military stationed here or army stationed here, and they take care of the entire economic and social well-being of the region. So it's like a district in modern India. So during that time they were called subas or military station areas. So it was considered to be the richest suba in the Mughal Empire. However, following the death of Aurangzeb, as we all know, the Nawab started ruling the semi-independent state of Bengal. So since as the Mughals deteriorated in their ruling, the Nawabs actually became very strong, not only in Hyderabad but also in Bengal, and they started ruling it well. And in fact, Nawab Alwardi Khan is a very, very famous known ruler of Bengal. If you have read Vipin Chandra, you know he actually got in a lot of developments. He strengthened the army and he was very, very strict with the British. However, following him, since we did not make a lot of advancement in the army and the coming rulers or the Nawab of Bengal weren't as popular and as strong as Aliwardi Khan, we ended up losing Bengal to the British in the Battle of Plassi in 1757, which was fought between Robert Clive and on the British side, and French allies in Sirajud-Dowlah on the Indian side. So let's look at this here. This is Plassi. Plassi is located on the banks of river Hooghly. Is the map very clear? Is the map visible? Any doubts so far? So Clive actually attacked from this region, Odisha, and they came to meet in Plassi, and definitely Sirajud-Dowlah actually lost the Battle of Plassi because Clive had bribed Mir Zafar Khan, or the army commander-in-chief of Sirajud-Dowlah's army, to come to their side, and they ended up losing the war. Finally, the company seized complete control of Bengal, and over the next 100 years, they completely transformed Bengal's economy from being an extremely rich economy to completely plundering it to further their agendas in Britain. And in fact, it is said that the Industrial Revolution in Britain is actually financed by Bengal's economy. All right. So Plassi is located on the Hooghly River, north of Calcutta, 150 kilometers north of Calcutta. That means here. So here it is Plassi, and it is located on the banks of Hooghly River. All right. Great, folks. Now let's come back and end this. So as I've already told you, Bengal still accounted, after even the occupation of Bengal, it accounted for 50% of the GDP of the empire. It was a crown jewel even for the empire. And as I've told you, shipbuilding, saltpeter production, craftsmanship, agriculture produce, textile manufacturing was still a big hit from Bengal. In fact, Muslim Bengal cotton textiles was still a huge rage in Europe. So much so that almost 200% to 300% import duties were leveraged in Britain to actually forbid Bengal cloth from coming in Europe and disrupting the European textiles. Now, let's come to the next part. So it is said that Bengal actually finally converted to Islam because Islam was considered to be more egalitarian than the Hindu caste system. And so most of the population that we currently see, the Bengali Muslim population, is actually a population of people converted to Islam rather than being the original inhabitants or the original followers of the Islamic religion. So why am I telling you that? Because all these cultural nuances are reflected in the present day Bangladeshi society, and that is why now Islam is the official region of Bangladesh. So the history actually starts back from 8th century, sorry, the 13th century, when Khilji actually acquired Bengal. So let's proceed to our next phase of Bangladesh's history, which is from 18th century to 1971. That is what happened between British India till Bangladesh actually came into formation, right? So we'll study the history between that part. Coming here, the British actually tried to develop this area. They established several schools, colleges, and universities in now what is known as Bangladesh. During the same time, the Aligarh movement and the Bengal Renaissance movement actually came into place. So we have some very famous stalwarts, Sir Syed Ahmad Khan and Raja Ram Mohan Roy, who came during this time and tried to reform the society. So it was that time that Bengal was seeing all this liberalization in terms of thought and philosophical bent of mind. There were also a lot of novelists, social reformers, and feminists that emerged from the Muslim Bengal society during the late 19th century. That means somewhere in 1890s. Bengal was the first states to actually get electricity and municipal water systems that were introduced way back in 1890s. There were cinemas opened in many towns during the early 20th century. So if you can see, Bangladesh has not always been poor. This region was a cultural development hub. In fact, even now, if you visit Kolkata and if you visit that area where the Park Street and the entire old building setup is there, the writers building or the other buildings you see, it's still extremely rich in our cultural heritage. In fact, if you go to Kolkata and if you're visiting Park Street, in between you can actually see the offices of all those associations which was set during the time of Indian independence, preferably before the Indian independence. all those associations about which you read in the history, you can see their offices in those marble buildings. The writers building is still very beautiful, and if you look at the architecture of Kolkata, you will see still a huge reflection of Portuguese come British architecture that is mixed. In fact, if you visit the Victoria Memorial or those gardens there, you will see a huge impact of European architecture. So it's beautiful, though the preservation of the buildings is still not very high. But if you visit that part of Kolkata, it's a delight to watch. It's an adverent delight to watch. In fact, if you look at the windows there, the architecture of the windows is such that you have a lot of shades in the windows. The windows actually look like this. There's a lot of shades in the windows, and you can actually open them from inside. And the ceilings in those buildings is extremely high. In fact, I happened to be, it's a personal experience, when we actually stayed in Kolkata for a while. That time, I think back in 2009, we were there when the Ayla cyclone had just hit Bengal. So that point of time, we had happened to stay in the old mint, near the old mint, in an army cantonment. And when you go and see those buildings, they have huge ceilings, extremely huge ceilings. They don't have any provision for air conditioning, but the ceilings are extremely huge. The windows are such that there is an excellent air circulation that goes around inside the buildings, and they're very closely built near to the Havra station or the Havra bridge. So it's a beautiful sight to behold. Bengal still holds or Kolkata still holds a lot of cultural history. So if you ever get the chance to visit that place, in fact, I think Prakash is from Jamshedpur, so you might be visiting Kolkata very often. Now, since you know about it, now since you're reading about the history, go and visit those old historical buildings, because they will give you a very intelligent overview of the architecture, how British, Mughal, Portuguese architecture actually come together. So Kolkata is a sight to behold in that respect. And in fact, a similar thing can be seen in Mumbai also. If you go to the Pedder Road, there's a footbridge on Pedder Road, from where if you stand, you get, so you see the traffic flowing under going to Kulaba, and from there if you stand on that footbridge, all around you are buildings which are a combined architecture of Portuguese, British, and the current Indian architecture. So they're all combined architecture. In three different buildings you can see three different architectures, and they're beautifully made and beautifully preserved. So somebody should actually visit the Marine Drive, and you will see a lot of couple of old heritage buildings there. So if you only visit those buildings, and if you see the way the structure has been made, it is in line with the rainfall, it is in line with the climatic conditions of those areas. So in Bengal, you'll see the shades are sloping downwards so that rainfall could actually fall beneath them, or there are slopes on these structures. There are open balconies outside. In Mumbai, if you go, again, there are slopes on the structures. The rises are high because they actually follow almost the similar climatic conditions of very high rainfall and very hot and humid conditions. So the architecture is very similar, and yet they've managed to preserve it in a extremely nice manner. So it's an important sight to behold. In fact, if somebody is there in Kolkata, please visit the Park Street. You'll see a lot of heritage buildings out there. Okay, coming back to this area. So East Bengal's plantation economy was very important to British Empire. In fact, British were the one who actually introduced the plantations, whether it be Bengal or whether it be Sri Lanka. So jute and tea then became very important items of export from India, and they still are. So the jute growing areas actually came to India, and the jute exporting areas actually went to Bangladesh. And similarly, what happened for cotton also? The important cotton growing areas actually went to Pakistan, especially to Bangladesh and the West Pakistan, and the other areas actually came into India. So British also established the port of Chittagong and the port of Narayanganj, which is in tax-free ports, which I already talked about. Let's come to the railway part. I've already talked about that Bengal was one of the first regions in Asia to have a railway back in 1862. So it actually happened in the Darshana railway station. Go and look for Darshana railway station in your Google Maps and see how that ancient railway is connected. So it is along the same railway line that was established by the British. Now we are running the Maitreyi Express between India and Bangladesh, about which I'll be talking in the second session. All right. Guys, are you finding it interesting till now? Because only 20 minutes more of lecture is left. Is everybody fine? Are you finding it interesting? Because Bangladesh's history is as interesting as it gets, and it's very, very important to understand how it has progressed to better able to understand the history of the Indian subcontinent and to better be able to understand the history between India and Bangladesh. Is it clear so far? Am I making progress into your heads here? Any doubts, any concerns, anything that you would want to add? All right. So I should move further? Okay. Now, these are the two stalwarts about which I was talking, Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. Let's come to the fourth part of Bangladesh's history, how we actually progressed to the 1971. Now, as you all know, 1906, the Swadeshi movement was in response to the splitting of Bengal into East Bengal and West Bengal. They actually tried. Yeah, the first railway was in Thane, you're right. But in the Asian region, when we talk about this Bengal region, it's one of the first. They are not saying the earliest ones, they are saying one of the first regions in Asia to have a railways in Bangladesh. It's in 1861. You're right, that happened in 1856. Otherwise, how would they have actually culled down the 1857 rebellion? So you're right. But it's one of the first regions in Asia to have a railway. Right? Yes, it does, Srihari. I hope Prakash your doubt is solved. You're right, Srihari. That happens. History of Bengal actually reveals India's history of struggle for Indian independence because Bengal has been the forebearer of our freedom for independence. So it's very, very important to understand about it. Okay. Going further, guys, this was the time when All India Muslim League actually came into existence in 1906 in Dhaka when the Swadeshi movement was going on. And this in 1929 is a very, very important development. All Bengal Tenants Association was formed. Now, as you can understand, whether it be Kerala, all right, or whether it be Bengal, most of the times the commoners were Muslims and the people who used to actually provide them with money or the businessmen were Hindu people, and they actually worked with a lot of cooperation. So there was a lot of Hindu Muslim unity. However, as you can see, so Hindus were always at a greater advantage because they were the money lending class. So this organization called All Bengal Tenants Association, this came to represent the interest of the tenants which were working on the farms of the Hindu landed gentry. So these were predominantly Muslims. So it's actually when this organization got established, we can see some change starting to occur between Hindu-Muslim unity because now the economics interest actually started clashing. In fact, this tenant association, the members of this tenant association further ended up becoming the prime ministers of Bengal, which actually led to the final partition of Bengal into East Bengal and West Bengal, with East Bengal going towards Pakistan. So let's see how that actually happened. So in 1929, this All Bengal Tenants Association was formed. It was during the same time that the Indian independence movement and the Pakistan movements both were gaining strength during the early 20th century or the 1920s when the Khilafat movement also came in practice. So this was the last time when the Hindus and the Muslims united to fight for the Muslims in the Turkish region. You all must be knowing about the Khilafat movement of 1919, right? Prakash, it's yes, partly the reason is because it was the first one to be colonized. The second reason is why was colonized? Because of its extremely rich economic past. Why is that related? Because the Nawabs of Bengal, so unlike the deterioration that was going on in Delhi because of the Mughal Empire, Bengal was actually prospering. So that is one of the reasons. Climatically, strategically, Bengal was very, very important, and that is what brought British to Bengal, finally established their hegemony there. So yes, because it was the first ones to be colonized, it was also the first ones which actually had this awakening that India should get independent from the British rule. So that's why Bangladesh or Bengal remains very, very important to India's history and to the world history of colonization as well. Right? I hope I've answered your question, Prakash. All right? Okay, so let's go here. Bangladesh Legislative Assembly was actually set up in 1937. Do you guys remember? There was a time in the history. So, in the first elections that happened after the Legislative Council and everything began to set up, Indian National Congress did very well. However, Gandhi was never in favor of actually Congress participating in the elections. He just wanted to do a lot of groundwork. But a significant faction of Indian National Congress wanted to participate in the elections because they had tasted power once. So that was one reason. And the second reason was that they felt that it is only by participating in the polity you can actually do the betterment of people, you can do more good. So although the Congress won a majority of seats in the 1937 elections, but Congress actually lost on the Muslim front. So during that time, communalism had become a real issue. However, Nehru chose to ignore it at his own peril. He thought we'll actually, somehow manage to stride through it, but that never happened. And both Muslim League and Indian National Congress couldn't actually completely represent Muslim interest in India, and that actually led to a major rift. So that was the time when this tenant association, the members of this tenant association, actually started becoming more heavy. So that means neither the Muslim League nor the Indian National Congress, which actually represented secular interests, both these parties were secular to a large extent. The other parties who were predominantly Islamist or who were predominantly Hindus, right, the Hindu Mahasabha, and the other organizations who were predominantly going for the Islamic agenda, they actually started becoming very, very popular. And that is why A.K. Fazul Haq of the Krishak Praja Party, who was also from the All Bengal Tenants Association, was elected as the first Prime Minister of Bengal, right, after the 1937 elections. In fact, it was him only who supported the Lahore Resolution, which talked about giving the Eastern Bengal and the northwestern frontier to Pakistan, or actually having a separate state of Pakistan based on the religion. So it was from that time that the seeds for Indo-Pakistan partition were sown in the Indian polity, right? Finally, in 1946, Bengal Provincial Muslim League, that was a part of the Muslim League, All India Muslim League, won the provincial election. Indian National Congress lost out to the predominantly Muslim parties. And finally, on 14th August 1947, Pakistan was born and India was born. And East Bengal, with Dhaka as its capital, came to be known as the most populous province of Pakistan. So at that point of time, still, it was led by Governor General Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who promised freedom of religion and secular democracy. So at that point of time, till in the early years of Pakistani history, East Bengal actually prospered a lot because secular credentials were still strong. Economy, they were trying to liberalize the economy. They were also a new nation. So they progressed on the same path as India. And East Bengal ended up becoming one of the most cosmopolitan provinces of Pakistan and also an economically prosperous ones. In fact, this is something that they continued till the later times also, which again became one of the major irritants between West Pakistan and East Pakistan. We will see how. So during this time, in 1950s, the East Bengal Legislative Assembly actually enacted a land reform, and they abolished the permanent settlement system that was going on in Bengal and the zamindari system. So the land reforms took place. They started liberalizing their economy, and since it was a very cosmopolitan province, so it actually gave rise to a lot of urbanization. So East Pakistan was actually blooming. The industry was blooming, the society was blooming, and that actually led to a lot of friction between East Pakistan and West Pakistan because a similar thing was not actually happening in West Pakistan. And with the first Bengali language movement in 1952, the first signs of friction were visible between West Pakistan and East Pakistan. So that is one of the reasons. The second reason is the geography. So if you look at it, if we actually go back to the map of Bangladesh, can you look at it like this? East Pakistan was here, all right. Now you have an entire India separating West Pakistan from East Pakistan. So even if India wasn't, yes, you're right. You're right, Sajan. So later on, going further, Muslim League actually, or the Aligarh movement actually started changing its demands. Why? Because they wanted more economic representation of the Muslims. They actually believed in British, that British wanted to provide them with better amenities and better educational backgrounds. This was not the truth. So they actually fell prey to British designs of separating Hindus and Muslims. So yes, you can say that. All right. So even if India wouldn't have intervened, do you think this political experiment could have lasted more than 50 years or 60 years? Because see, you are separated geographically, it becomes extremely difficult. And West Pakistan was extremely hostile to India. Pakistan was extremely hostile to India. So whatever you choose to do, if you do not have strong connectivity links, it is very difficult to run the polity. There will be a lot of distrust, and actually that is what happened between West Pakistan and East Pakistan, which was, this actually was progressed further by the Indo-Pak war in 1965, when this link was completely cut up by India. So how do you actually communicate with your Eastern Pakistan people? That actually led to a lot of rift, a lot of distrust. And let's progress further to, right, to this area and understand what was again happening. So on one hand, East Pakistan was actually progressing, West Pakistan was lagging behind. And in 1956, finally, when British finally left Pakistan, Pakistan adopted its new constitution in 1956. And as you will see, when we progress, yes, Sajan, you can kind of say that. It was not an enclave exactly. It was, okay, right, you can call it an enclave. You're right. Okay. So coming back here, in fact, now when we'll discuss till the time the constitution is formed, you'll come across that a lot of constitutions have actually come in Bangladesh's polity, and that actually leads to a lot of disturbances. In fact, when I'll conclude, I'll tell you how political stability is very, very important for a country's development. So Pakistan adopted its first constitution in 1956, but as I'm saying, the chinks were already visible in Pakistani polity. So even though three prime ministers came between 1956 to 1958 in Pakistan, all three of them from Bengali origin, none of them could actually complete their regime. And finally, Pakistan imposed military rule in 1958, and Ayub Khan became country's first strongman for 11 years. So 11 years under military rule. Definitely your polity had to go under a lot of screwing, and your polity and economy both were completely screwed. He again introduced a new constitution in 1962. So just after 6 years, you get another constitution, and there's a lot of political instability. And Pakistan's parliamentary system was actually replaced by a presidential gubernatorial system, which is still in practice in West Pakistan, or Pakistan, today's Pakistan. However, Eastern Pakistan now follows a parliamentary system, right? And as I told you, the Indo-Pakistani War of 1965 completely blocked the cross transport or cross-border transport links with neighboring India and Eastern Pakistan. It was also the 1965 blockade by India due to the Indo-Pakistani War is also known as the second partition in the Indian subcontinent. However, in 1966, now whenever there is a disturbance, whenever there is a suppression, will be different factions which will come to liberate that area. One such faction was the Awami League leader Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, also known as Bangabandhu, all right, or the friend of the Bangladeshi people. He came into prominence, and he gave a 6-point movement for a federal parliamentary democracy. So he said, look, we do not believe in the presidential system. We do not believe in having a unilaterally designed system which is not taking into account the plight of the Eastern Pakistani people. So let's have a movement where we actually give them federal democracy. That means that their province will have an equal say in how they actually want to run Eastern Pakistan. In fact, what were the things that actually led to Eastern Pakistan being so restive so as to go for a complete independence from Pakistan. So one of them was government actually differentiated between Eastern and Western Pakistan, and there was a greater government spending in Western Pakistan. However, all that money was actually taken from the surplus that was earned out of the exports of Eastern Pakistan. So that means uh, the work was done by Eastern Pakistani people, the economy was lifted by the Eastern Pakistani people. However, the benefits completely went to Western Pakistan. So definitely that was a cause of rift. Also, there was an inadequate representation of the Eastern Pakistani people in the economy and in the administration of the Pakistan. So there were financial transfers from East Pakistan to West Pakistan, and there was a refusal by the central government of Pakistan to release funds allocated for Eastern Pakistan. They said it's already a prosperous region, you do not need more funds. We will instead use those funds to develop West Pakistan. So it's something of a regional problem that we also see in India. For example, if we give more funds to Delhi, and if we neglect our Northeast, which Northeast actually feels that Northeast does not get adequate representation or adequate funds, so they have secessionist tendencies. So similar thing was going on between East Pakistan and West Pakistan. And in fact, taking a leaf out of there, if you see current government of India's funding structure, so whatever scheme comes in, the funding structure in the rest of the parts of India, the mainland India, is 50-50 between states and the central government, or 60-40 between states and the central government. However, in the northeastern areas, we have 90-10 ratio of funding. So 10% will come from the states and 90% funding will be done by the central government. So it's only if you maintain that kind of funding structure, you can actually keep India united, or you can keep any nation united. You cannot let regionalism come into the formation of a sovereign state. So that was what was happening there. Okay. Yes, Lata, you're extremely right. It was a very unnatural relationship that was divided by geography and language and cultural linkages. Extremely right. Beautifully put. Yes, you're right. You're right, Prakash. How much they had new geography in mind. They couldn't actually stabilize their own eastern province, and they wanted to actually occupy Junagadh. Extremely right. Okay, let's proceed. So 18th century to 1971. Now, this time when Sheikh Mujibur Rahman came up with this kind of agreement, he was arrested, which actually led to a lot of disinterest and disinfection amongst the people of Eastern Pakistan, leading to an uprising in 1969. Because of this uprising, Ayub Khan had to resign. So, after an 11-year reign, starting from 1958, he had to finally resign in 1969. But again, instead of him, martial law was introduced by General Yahya Khan. So no democracy was restored, but the military rule continued. However, after December 1970 election, so this was also a time when East Bengal was facing a major famine and a major flood. So after a major floods, there was a lot of people died in that flood, and there was a huge food insecurity issue. So by December 1970, it was clear to the people of Eastern Pakistan that, it's like it's an end of a marriage. For example, after like 2 years, 3 years, or 10 years of marriage, somebody, a woman or a man, realizes that, look, we have done everything we could do, but now it's just almost impossible to carry on. So similar situation was going on in Eastern Pakistan, and the calls for independence of East Pakistan became extremely loud. And that point of time, what added fuel to the fire was, in the elections, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman actually swept to victory, yet he was not allowed to become the PM. In fact, he was arrested and taken, flown away. So then the people, riots and protest actually broke out in the entire Eastern Pakistan, and the flag of Bangladesh was raised for the first time on 23rd March, which was also Pakistan's Republic Day. However, on 25th March late evening, Pakistani military actually started with Operation Searchlight, and a huge Bangladeshi genocide then came to happen, for which Pakistan was berated internationally for carrying out that genocide against the Eastern Pakistani people. And when that happened, since Pakistan was berated internationally, it decided to attack India on 2nd December 1971. So India was not very much interested in actually going and intervening. But once attacked, then India went on a two-front war with Bangladesh, sorry, went two front war with Pakistan. It was fighting Western Pakistan on the Western front and aiding the Bangladeshi army on the Eastern front. And when the Eastern Bangladeshi army or Eastern Pakistan army, the Mukti Vahini, as it is called, in fact, to date, the Mukti Bandhus or the freedom fighters. To date, the Mukti Bandhus of Bangladesh and the Indian Army have a cultural foundation where they actually interact on a year-to-year basis or on an annual basis. In fact, it was further cemented in 2019. So when I'll be talking about India-Bangladesh relations, I'll be further talking about Mukti Bandhus and the relationships between the Indian Army. So Mukti Bahini was the Eastern Pakistan army, which was fighting, they were fighting a guerrilla war with the Western Pakistan army. So they were helped by Indian Air Forces and Indian Army to actually liberate Dhaka. And finally, the capital of Dhaka was liberated in mid-December, that is 16th of December, which is also known as the Vijay Divas, about which I've already talked. So since everybody around the world was clear what was happening in Eastern Pakistan on how Bangladesh became a new nation, it was immediately given recognition by approximately 86 countries. However, Pakistan had to be forced to recognize Bangladesh only in 1974 after a lot of other Muslim countries actually forced Pakistan. They said, now look, it's a reality. Bangladesh is an independent nation and you could not actually keep it. You weren't doing justice to Bangladesh. Now it's an independent nation and you need to recognize it. So after much coercion, much coaxing, much force, Pakistan finally started recognizing Bangladesh as a separate nation entity in 1974. So here we ended. All right. Yes, Srihari, the genocide was, see, obviously, if a certain people are revolting, like what happened in Rohingyas, you've attended my Myanmar class, right? So what happened in Rohingyas, if a certain population starts becoming militant, it starts attacking your army, what will you do? You will attack them back. And in that case, genocide is basically ethnical cleansing. So they were actually killing a lot of people from the Eastern Pakistan area just to maintain the Western Pakistan's rule over Eastern Pakistan or to prevent the splitting up of the country. In fact, the splitting up of Pakistan into East Pakistan or Western Pakistan or Bangladesh and Pakistan is still a wound that is sore amongst the Pakistani people. They are like, India, we don't like you because you actually split our country into two. Nobody likes somebody who actually ends up splitting your nation. Will we like if Pakistan keeps interfering? Do we like if Pakistan goes ahead and actually splits Jammu and Kashmir into two parts? We will not like it. Even if the people of Jammu and Kashmir want to be with Pakistan, we wouldn't really want Pakistan to intervene and separate our nation into two parts. So Pakistan till date hates India for that very same reason that you actually split our country into two parts. Is it clear, Srihari? Now here is a brief about the history of Bangladesh. So till 1917, what happened? So originally till 500 BC, it was the Vanga kingdom, which was there in the ancient parts. Alexander was so afraid of the Ganges warriors or the warriors that lived in this Bengali region that he decided to retreat. It is said in history. And then came the Pala Empire, about which I've already talked. Finally, Bakhtiyar Khalji introduced Islam as a part of Delhi Sultanate into Bengal. And then we had Bengal becoming a part of the Mughal Empire under Babur. And in Battle of Plassi, it came under the power of the British. And it became East Bengal after the partition. And finally, on 26th March 1971, Bangladesh became independent. And 16 December 1971 is celebrated as the Victory Day of Bangladesh. Since I'll be sharing this PDF later, it is actually a very, very important. It's Bangladesh is actually also known as the Ganges Data Civilization. So this summary has been developed by a journalist from Bangladesh to actually present it on the TV. So I took that summary to present it here. Okay, great. Let's come to the last part. So guys, this is the last slide. So another 5 minutes to go and then we'll end today's session. So now it's the third time that a constitution comes in. So the first time the constitution came in was 1956. The second time the new constitution for Bangladesh came in was 1962. And now in 1972, a third constitution came in and it established Bangladesh as a secular, multi-party democracy with socialist credentials. So they almost getting the help from India. Now, there is a very, very interesting thing that is happening here. 1970s was the time, if you remember very clearly, it was during 1975 that the emergency came in during the time of Indira Gandhi. It was also the time when we actually introduced the word called socialist in our preamble when the 1942 amendment happened, right? So, since this entire Bangladesh was carved out by Indira Gandhi, definitely their polity had to be influenced by Indian polity. So they became a secular, multi-party democracy nation with socialist leanings under the influence of India only. And obviously, they had seen India growing by leaps and bounds, and they wanted to establish a completely new political order. And related to what I've already talked about, so Eastern Pakistan was always a very, very cosmopolitan region with very, very urban leanings. So, socialism or the agent of secularism or multi party democracy comes very naturally to them. It was during Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's time only that the relationships further strengthened with India. However, it was also a time when Bangladesh was reeling under huge floods and famines together, and there was a lot of agitation from the opposition parties. So it was becoming very difficult for Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. He promised a lot to the country, but he actually could not carry forward the promise. So he started becoming a lot of he started becoming very authoritarian. He was just trying to grab power now. He just wanted to keep his seat, and that led to him becoming very, very unpopular, and he was finally assassinated in 1975. So can you see the parallels that are happening? 1975 India. Indira Gandhi, peak of her power, implemented emergency, became very authoritarian. 1975, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was assassinated for becoming very authoritarian. And in fact, whenever you go in the history, whenever a dictator becomes very, very authoritarian, and whenever it's the time when people can't bear him any longer, either the regime changes there or democracy comes in, or that person is assassinated. So even in our history, Indira Gandhi was assassinated and Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated. In fact, I've talked about that in my second and third lectures when I've talked about our PM's influence on foreign policy. So, till date, Indira Gandhi's major contribution to Indian foreign policy remains her way of building up Bangladesh and giving us a friendly relationship in our eastern front. So, you know why it's very important? Because earlier we were having hostile parties on both the fronts, on the western front and on the eastern front. Now we only have hostile parties on the eastern front and on the northern front. But China, for China, we still have buffer states of Nepal and Bhutan, right? But with Bangladesh coming in as a friendly neighbor, it's a very huge sense of respite. Otherwise, you can imagine if Bangladesh was not there and still we had a part of Pakistan on our eastern front, and with China getting so belligerent, it would have become so difficult for India to actually prosper or to progress or to even maintain its national security. So, from the point of national security, the evolution of Bangladesh into its present state is extremely, extremely important for us. We are using that. Manikandan, we are actually using Bangladesh to go into the northern eastern states. In fact, in the beginning of the lecture itself, I think you came late to the lecture, I mentioned it that we are trying to have rail links. We already have rail links from where the Metri Express goes to Bangladesh. We already have the bus links, and we are already trying to build further rail links to Tripura to access Tripura to Bangladesh. So we are already doing that. All right, and we are also using Myanmar. So Myanmar actually cuts down our access to the further northeastern states which are at the border regions with Myanmar. In fact, Manikandan, I would request you to go and see the video of my India Myanmar relationships. It's India and Eastern Neighbours part 4, right? Part 4 is India and Myanmar relations, so please go and watch that video. You'll completely understand. Yes, yes, we've signed the India Bangladesh protocols also. Sujan, I'll take that entire part in the second part. So today I'll just complete Bangladesh's history, and then in the second part we'll go around looking at the entire India Bangladesh relationships in detail. So I'll cover everything there. All right? Okay. Now, 1975 to 1991 was the time when there was a huge uncertainty in the polity of Bangladesh. So, even when it had been liberated, it was a similar time to what we were having. So, between what do you say, 1991 to 2000s, we had a lot of coalition governments keep coming in and going out. Their time was between 1975 to 1991, when a lot of it was a presidential area, but it was full of military rule and coups. Each ruler kept replacing the other one. So the military rulers kept on replacing each other, and that actually had a lot of economic devastation for Bangladesh. If you don't have political stability, it completely plunges the country down. So as much as they were progressing in the earlier part of 1950s, the economy completely went bankrupt during this time, during the military rule time. However, come 1991 and the parliamentary era again began with Begum Khaleda Zia becoming country's first female prime minister. So in India, we still have only Indira Gandhi as the only prime minister, female prime minister, though a very strong one. But Bangladesh, we can say, is very progressive on that front. So the Bangladeshi government, since the time of 1991 till now, it actually keeps alternating between the Bangladesh Nationalist Party of Begum Khaleda Zia and the Awami League of Sheikh Hasina. Now, Sheikh Hasina also happens to be the daughter of Mujibur Rahman. And since she's the daughter of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, she's a very pro-India friendly PM. So it is always good for us that Sheikh Hasina actually becomes the PM, because then the India-Pakistan relations actually become very friendly, because the ties run very historic. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was very close to Indira Gandhi, and so is Sheikh Hasina. So she actually has a lot of friendly vibes towards India, and that actually helps us in maintaining national security in our northeastern border regions, and actually furthering connectivity with Bangladesh, or furthering economic relationships with Bangladesh. So in 1991, Begum Khaleda Zia became the PM, and she actually was a very pioneer. Her finance minister was a pioneer in liberalizing the Bangladesh economy. And the current economic growth that we see in Bangladesh, that it is an emerging country, when we talk about the fastest growing economies, that's thanks to Begum Khaleda Zia's government in 1991. So in the same time when Indian economy was being liberalized, it was happening similarly in Bangladesh. 1996, Sheikh Hasina comes to power and she signs the Ganga Water Treaty with India when the Farakka barrage was built. And then India and Bangladesh actually signed this historic treaty when we decide to share water with Bangladesh. So up till now, India was not ready to sign a treaty with Bangladesh on sharing the water resources. We were just having some MOUs, right? But during this time, Sheikh Hasina, since she had very good relationships with India, they decided to actually form a water treaty, because treaty actually ties our hands. It actually makes us internationally responsible to share the waters responsibly with Bangladesh. Until now, this arrangement has worked really nicely. However, it's just a 30-year agreement, so it will be expiring soon. So we need to take care of this. We need to see the future of sharing the water resources, because the Asian region is extremely water starved. So let's see how this entire Ganges Water Treaty pans out in the future. And Bangladesh, being a lower riparian state, actually has a dispute with with India relating to sharing of the Ganges water, because at times Bihar and UP actually hold back Ganges water, so that the lower riparian state of Bangladesh does not get adequate water in the summer months, or there's a huge dearth of water in the summer months. Let's come to 2001. Again, Khaleda Zia came to power, and she led to further growth in the economy of Bangladesh. But at that point of time, the political disturbances or internal insurgencies, the internal security problems of Bangladesh came to a fore, and there was a lot of militant activism going on. So she shut down that militant activism completely. However, due to so many disturbances, she finally lost out politically to Sheikh Hasina, and from 2006 onwards, Sheikh Hasina has been in power, making her the longest serving PM of Bangladesh till now. Yes, of course, Srihari. The way she handled it, there is no doubt about it. That Indira Gandhi's interpretation of Bangladesh, I see, she was an astute political statements. What can you expect out of Nehru's daughter? Nehru was a world statesman. Nehru was so intricately related to all the world affairs. He is the father of our Indian foreign policy. He gave us the Panchsheel. He established the NAM. So his daughter, being in very, very close cooperation, working with very closely with him, definitely she was an astute statesman like him. And I think we should still thank her. If not for her, we would never have had Bangladesh. She was an extremely decisive leader. If not for her decisiveness, if not for her boldness, if not for her preparedness, we wouldn't have a eastern frontier with a friendly nation. So definitely, she has a very strong influence on the political or the foreign policy of India. In fact, Srihari, you shouldn't even be asking me this question because you have been following my lectures since the very first lecture, and I've talked about it in detail when I talked about the influence of Indian PMs on our foreign policy. So you should have already understood it. You shouldn't even have been asking me this question because you've been attending these lectures for a very, very long time. So if you don't remember it, I would request you to go and watch those videos again. It will give you a better understanding. Guys, it's my sincere request to all those who are watching this lecture right now that please keep going and visiting those lectures again and again, or make notes out of it, or even before you come into my class, don't come empty minded or blank minded. Do some revision and then come to the class, because then you'll understand the classes in a better manner. Otherwise, if you lose the previous history, you will not be able to understand India-IR relations. And I really can't help that, because we can't go back again and again to those principles, the first principles of Indian foreign policy. So I need all of you to come prepared to the class, to come to the class after revision. See, we are not doing it for fun here. I expect my students to come up with a lot of revision. Once they have done their revision, then you understand these classes better. So it's for your own benefit. Yes? Okay. So these are some of the photos that I wanted to show you. This is Khalida Zia. She is obviously Sheikh Hasina. This is we signing the treaty on Vijay Divas 16 January. He is the Pakistani general. This is a cutting of the newspaper when when the Pakistani troops surrendered unconditionally to India during the 1971 war. And this is a cartoon representation of how how Eastern Bengal and India came together to beat up Pakistan and freed Bangladesh in 1971. With that, I'll end today's session. Jitendra, go and watch the video. Sorry, Jatin, go and watch the video. Because I've done it in detail. You watch the video once, go and watch it and start, because the recording will be available immediately after the class. In the next 2-3 minutes, you can see that, right? So go and watch that. Go and watch the video. If you still have some doubts, tell me in the next session, because India Bangladesh, I'll be continuing in the next session. So in the beginning, come early and then you can ask me the doubts, but don't come to the class late. If you don't understand something, I'm willing to explain you. Right? Ethnicity, Gautam, see, they are Muslims, but the way they follow the Muslim religion, even that is different. But language, yes, it is a major issue. Language and the way they have, so I'll tell you, East Pakistan, even Bangladesh of today is very, very cosmopolitan. There's much more peace than there is in Pakistan. So it's far more cosmopolitan. So that's a second point of difference, right? It's okay, Jatin, don't be sorry. What I want you to do is, just after this class, and I think within 1 or 2 minutes, the entire video will be available, right? It's in recorded format. Go and look at those first few slides that I've covered. If you still have doubts, in the next session, I will be continuing with Indo-Bangladesh relationships part 2. So in the beginning of the session, you can ask me your doubts, if there are any. I don't think there'll be any doubts because I've covered everything in detail, right? But if there are any, feel free to ask them in the next session, right? Everybody clear? So this is my Telegram group link for current affairs. It's here. And this is my Telegram channel link for current affairs. So here at both these places, I post all my upcoming videos, both on YouTube and my upcoming classes on Unacademy. In fact, I'm running a prelims mock test series on Unacademy. So all those who are new to this session of India-Bangladesh, You can follow me on Unacademy. We are running a prelims mock test series which has got an extremely good response. So hope to see all of you there. It happens at 8:30 p.m. in the evening. We have a session today on Unacademy as a special class. So it's a free for all class. Please come to that class at 8:30 p.m. in the evening. It's a wonderful class to solve some questions from the prelims, and it'll actually help you learn some tips and tricks to solve prelims questions in a better manner. With that, no, it's okay, Srihari. You can confirm. See, what actually bothers me is that my regular students shouldn't be asking me questions like this. They should ask me better questions. That's my intent. Ask me better questions. Because if you ask me questions like this, then that means you haven't revised your things properly. So revise and come, because unless you revise, you will forget what we have done in the past. And IR is extremely interrelated. So unless you revise, you will not be able to understand the entire intricacies of IR, right? Okay, guys. You're welcome, and we'll end today's session. So if you like the video, please hit the like button, share and subscribe to our channel. Share this video with your friends and subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for more notifications. And for getting subscription under the UPSC CSE category, always use my code SBUS, because it will give you an instant 10% discount, and it will also help you get my personal mentorship. So all those people who are a part of Unacademy or who become a part of Unacademy after taking the subscriptions, they have my personal mentoring along with the subscription. So with that, I'll close for today. Thank you and have a good day. Any more doubts, anybody? Or should I close it? Okay, sure.